Hey there, and welcome to the weekly recap here for Fuzzy Cube Entertainment on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I'm just going to give a special shout out to some of my clients here on their yearly anniversaries. So, Rob's Concrete Pumping, if you did any concrete work done, you should check them out. And Riley's Construction Limited do fantastic renovations, new builds, everything. Anyway, moving on, the topic of today's weekly recap is basically cybersecurity. There's a Black Hat conference that just ended not that long ago, and all sorts of interesting stuff came out of that. And speaking on terms of cybersecurity and how important it is, I was just at a restaurant not that long ago that used iPads for ordering, and after a little bit of playing around with it, you could change the table that they're assigned to with the default password of 1111. So I mean, this is exactly why people need to be a little bit more careful about just picking automatic generated like simple passwords and things like that. Anyway, first off on the recap. So the DBRS downgraded Bell Canada, their ratings firm. They downgraded them from an A low to a triple B high because they're starting to kind of overstretch their reach a little bit. They had a purchase of Q9 Networks for $675 million last year, and then with the pending purchase of MTS for $3.1 billion and $800 million in debt, they're thinking reflection of a likely outcome of what they think is going to happen here, unless the government steps in and prevents the purchase, is that's going to go through. So that's pretty interesting to see a ratings firm sort of take a side a little bit on the stuff that's going on. So when it comes to security, let's start off here with Samsung Mobile. And at the Black Hat conference, there was a paper that was presented by Salvador Mendoza that talked about insecurities in the token that the near-field communication chip inside Samsung payphones uses, and that it could be skimmed and used at later dates. Now, on one side, you have to have extreme close proximity to the user. So, I mean, that's a benefit. The likelihood of somebody getting that close is pretty slim. I mean, NFC is, inches. That's sort of the idea. And the user is notified on use. But it is important to note that, Samsung denies that this is even a possibility when they really should sort of be thinking about, how to patch these subsequent issues down the road. Moving on, quad router security flaw. So 900 million Qualcomm devices have been impacted by this. You do need user interaction to get yourself caught up in it. So installing third-party apps from other websites, side-loading, stuff like that. It will give them root access, which basically gives access over the microphone, the screen, everything. It's kind of slipping in an access point behind the operating system. And these aren't just fringe devices that are being affected. We're talking the Nexus 5X, the Nexus 6, the 6P, and the new Galaxy S7 variants, as well as the BlackBerry DTEK 50 that I talked about last week that was touted as being the most secure Android phone out there right now. Apparently not that much. And that comes from CNET. And the mobile payment one was from Engadget if you want to look more into it. So moving on, Google took a swing at Adobe. They want to look at making Chrome the default to HTML5. And with Chrome taking up about 71.4% of browsers right now, that's huge. So if they're blocking Flash right from the default, in my opinion, that's a big win for the internet, a big blow to the porn industry, and that comes out to you from 9 to 5 Mac. So the last thing I want to talk about with you, we're going to diverge from security a little bit and talk about the logic-defying double-slit experiment. So it's a modern physics experiment in quantum mechanics that's pretty cool. So it uses a photon of light and two slits, and it fires the photon at them, and the goal is to kind of see where it goes. The interesting thing is it always seems to happen simultaneously. It's a test of probability, so it's supposed to, like I said, it's supposed to go through one of the two, and they're supposed to be able to detect it. The interesting thing about this test, though, is that whenever detectors are present to kind of measure which slit the photon goes through, nothing really shows up properly. There's an interference pattern that disrupts the actual calculations of what they're trying to grab, and it doesn't matter if they have it on the front or back. And they've even tried something called the delayed choice experiment. They've tried using crystals to split the photons into two identical photons, so one normal one and one that's meant to be an interference pattern, to kind of see where this stuff goes. And even if the second one is detected after the first one, it still ruins an interference pattern, which makes a really interesting quantum mechanics idea that it observes changes and then can affect those events after it's happened. Now, I mean, this is just some really interesting experiments. Nobody really knows exactly how this stuff works. That's why quantum mechanics is so cool. Anyway, so that's our weekly recap for this week, and yeah, peace.